While following the plot of the flood story as it is depicted in Atrahasis and Gilgamesh, you have probably noticed its close connections with the famous biblical flood story. However, before we proceed to a comparative discussion, we should briefly refer to other Mesopotamian sources that describe the flood. Let's begin with the earliest mythological attestation of the flood, known as the Sumerian flood story. The Sumerian version of the flood has only reached us in one fragmentary tablet. Because the tablet is broken, a full reconstruction of the myth is difficult. We can tell, however, that the text describes the creation of humankind and then the divine plan to annihilate humanity by means of a flood. In this version, the hero of the flood is called Ziusudra, in Sumerian long life. You may read an English translation of this ancient version of the myth online. Another version of the flood story has only recently been found. This is an Akkadian report, probably dated to the Old Babylonian period. The tablet was deciphered in 2014 by the Assyriologist Irving Finkel, and since then has been known as the Ark Tablet. Finkel discovered that the tablet includes instructions given by Ea to Atrahasis on how to build the boat. These specific instructions are unknown to us from other sources relating to the flood.
This is the famous Ark Tablet, and it contains a version of the flood story, which is in some ways familiar, but in other details rather new. And the tablet itself first came to modern attention in the 1980s when it was brought to the department by a visitor. Part of the service we offer in the department is that people can come and ask our opinion about things, and quite often they will bring objects, sometimes real, sometimes not, and ask us a little bit about them. And this one had been in the collection of this gentleman's father for some time, and they didn't know what it was, and it just so happens it's a unique account of the flood story. So my colleague Irving Finkel, who was the man who first saw this tablet, and after many years finally was able to study it, made his own remarkable discoveries. The tablet itself, or if you like, the story in it, doesn't seem to fit exactly into any of the known big stories. It doesn't look like it's a copy of Gilgamesh or Atrahasis, but it's somehow part of that mix.
Below are some of the opening lines of the tablet translated to English by Finkel.
Atrahasis, pay heed to my advice that you may live forever. Destroy your house, build a boat, spurn property, and save life. Draw out the boat that you will make on a circular plan. Let her length and breadth be equal.
Following this is a detailed technical description of the boat's structure and method of construction. Later, we find remnants of the rest of the story, including the banquet held by Atrahasis for his relatives and friends. The tablet concludes at the point when Atrahasis' boat builder locks the door of the boat. The most interesting innovation suggested by this version is the round shape of Atrahasis' boat, which differs from the square-shaped boat described in the Epic of Gilgamesh. It also differs from Noah's rectangular-shaped boat as described in the Bible. Another innovation in this tablet, which is significant from a comparative point of view, is the mention of the number of animals that should be brought into the boat. Finkel deciphered the following lines in the tablet.
But the wild animals from the steppe, 2 by 2 the boat did they enter.
Following this discovery, Finkel re-examined the tablets of Atrahasis and was able to identify among the broken signs parts of the Akkadian words 2 by 2. This discovery adds a new point of similarity between the Mesopotamian flood tradition and the biblical account. Finally, we will review a spatial version of the flood story found in an Akkadian tablet from Ugarit. A short note about Ugarit. This ancient city is a highly important source for materials relevant for comparative study of the Bible and the ancient Near East. We have mentioned Ugarit very briefly in our discussion of the creation traditions as one of the places where the battle between the storm god and the sea is documented. Ugarit was located on the Mediterranean coast of present-day Syria. The Ugaritic culture and language belong to the northwestern branch of the Semitic cultures. This means that it was especially close to the Israelite culture, which is also northwest Semitic. However, this background is not so relevant to the flood tablet from Ugarit because this tablet is not written in Ugaritic, it's written in Akkadian, and it represents Mesopotamian tradition. The fact that it was found in Ugarit on the periphery of Mesopotamian culture is interesting, but for our purposes, we will treat this source as another Mesopotamian version of the flood. This text describes how the hero of the flood, whose name is not mentioned in the few preserved lines, opens a window in the boat by means of a spade and axe, and then sends two birds to find land for him, a dove and a waterfall. What is most interesting about this version is its mention of time. About this version, the flood ended at the beginning of the month. The Bible reflects a similar tradition when it mentions that the tops of the mountains were first seen on the first day of the month in Genesis 8:5. Other Mesopotamian versions do not mention any dates in their descriptions of the flood. In addition to these original Mesopotamian texts, the Mesopotamian flood story later appeared in various Greek versions. Several of these have ramifications for our understanding of the biblical flood story in its relation to the Mesopotamian stories. These will be discussed in the following lectures.